In this video, we're back to work on my brother's big bore TW.
How'd I screw that up?
And if you watch to the end, we'll finally find out the top speed.
Now in certain situations, like most guys, I'm a big fan of a good rack.
And though this rack from Tusk is big and sturdy, it's a bit overkill for what my brother uses it for.
All right, let's get this hay wagon off of here. Ah. Am I missing something here? Is there another? Ah, under the seat, crying in the mud. Now would be a good time to move on to our next modification, which oddly enough involves removing the seat. Typically, you'd have to remove 2 bolts under here. You've got 2 6mm bolts holding the seat on, right here and here. Now that we have our seat removed, we can install the Bradley Performance Easy Seat Pin System. I thought this was pretty clever. It's a lot like the hood pins on the old school muscle cars. You get a couple of these pins with some, I believe these are called hairpins, and these tethers to hold your pins so you don't lose them. Now before we install the pins, we're going to want to put a little bit of Loctite on these things. Thread these into the seat. Oh, now it's all dirty. Another thing to note is once the thing is tightened down, there's a little hole in the pin for putting your pins into. Now it seems like it would be best if they pull toward the center because of the brackets on the frame. We're gonna see if we can get these to tighten and clock in the right position. Right now, it feels pretty tight and they're exactly the wrong way. They're exactly this way. Well, it doesn't seem like we can have these clocked properly and have them tight. So we're gonna rely solely on the Loctite to keep these things from backing out. So right there is tight. We're gonna back them off so that this little hole right here is going from left to right. Now just to be safe, we're gonna put another little drip down in here. Yes. Now let's see. Oh yeah. Holy smokes. Yeah, that's some weight. Now, according to the late great Malcolm Smith, weight is the enemy. As long as you want to go fast and handle well, I suppose. So let's see how much of an enemy this rack is. Saw 10 for a second. Looks like right around 10 pounds. Now, while the stock rear fender and tail lights function just fine, I think we can find something a little more streamlined and better looking. Now at this point, there's basically nothing holding the back fender on other than this little tab. There we go. Now we just need to unplug these things. Now to make life a little easier, how about we label some of these wires? It's pretty obvious we got 3 wires going to the tail light, 2 to each turn signal. So let's just put a big L on the left-hand turn signal. Here's some tape. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, what a shocker. We've got cobbling every single time. Work on a used bike or car. We've got cobbled wiring. Never fails. Wow. We'll pull these apart. Tail light here. So here is the original tail light and fender. We're going to be replacing that with this. So let's see if this tidy tail light bolts up to the TW or if it's a turd. There we go. Yeah, it looks like it'll bolt right up. All right, and just use the original hardware. Now we got to wire it up and we got to figure out what does what. That's got a lot more wires. I'm pretty sure that this has incorporated turn signals within the taillight that I suppose technically you could get by with. We'll use them, but we're still gonna run turn signals as well, just to make it a little more safe. Now to figure out what wires do what, we're just going to use a simple 12-volt test light. You can get versions of this just about anywhere. All you need to do is hook up the ground to the frame somewhere on a nice clean bolt without paint. You can just stick this in here and see what does what. There's a light inside of the handle that'll light up. So we'll just turn the key on here and, uh-oh. Is there any light? Is there any startage? Run. Poop.
The turn signals we're going to use are these units I also got off of Amazon. In fact, it's the same set that I have on my XTTR. And though they were inexpensive, I'm on the 3rd season riding off-road with them, and they still work perfectly.
So as a reference, here is the stock turn signal. This is what we're going with. Yes, it's smaller, but these things are pretty bright, and I think look way better. 2 of them are red, yellow, black, and 2 of them are white, yellow, black. The red is a stoplight. So while the battery is charging, why don't we install these turn signals? So we've got the ones with the red wires. So these incorporate the brake light. Oh man, I put it on backwards. No, just kidding.
Funny guy! Right here!
Now that our battery is charged back up again, let's nail down what of these 3 taillight wires do what. Turn the key on. Blue must be taillight. I'm guessing black is ground, and yellow must be our brake light. The light's not on, now I'll hit the brake. There we go. So now we need to establish what of these wires for our new taillight do what. I would assume the black will be ground. I've got this nice little lithium battery sitting here that we can check it on. We'll try yellow and see if that is our running light. Right turn signal. Red is probably brake light. That's all the way across. Brown looks like left turn signal. Green must be our running light. Green running light, and then add the red. Not a lot of difference there. All the more reason to add brake lights to our turn signals. Here's our wires for the bike harness. Just labeled them T for tail light, B for brake light, and then went and labeled all of these wires for the new tail light. Just take our blacks, our grounds. Fortunately, these plugs jive with each other, so that pops in real nice. Grab our green tail light wire for the new light, and our brake light, which is yellow on the bike harness and is red on the new taillight. So in theory, our taillight should be all wired up. And I like to put dielectric grease inside these plugs to protect them from corrosion. So we'll turn the key on. And brake. Wow, is that ever weak? Well, that's completely unimpressive. Is this thing in all the way? That's already like popping out. I don't have a lot of confidence in this light anymore. There it goes in. So I think what we're going to do to help out the brake light is to combine the left and right turn signals that are incorporated into the brake light. We'll bring those wires together with the brake light, and hopefully that'll wake it up a little bit. Now, when it comes to stripping wires, I've really come to appreciate this tool. You can set the depth of how much of the wire you want to strip and just poke it right in and pull the trigger and it's stripped. And also there's a cutter right here. So first we'll cut the ends off. Gosh, you're such a muppet. Now, poke it in there, and how slick is that? There's a lot of tools for stripping wires and they work just fine. But I tell you what, this thing just works so quick. Now we'll take the brake light wire and the left and right turn signal wires that are all incorporated in that tail light. Twist the individuals. And then we'll put them together and twist those together. And now we'll take one of these bullet terminals that you can get at any auto parts store. It does have this blue plastic that looks similar to the other ones, but this is actually shrink tubing. And that is a key difference between your common ones that are just rigid plastic. But we'll put that on there. Use this rinky-dink crimper tool. Make sure we get it on the wires. Give it a little tug. Should be good. Now you can use a lighter or anything like that to shrink the heat shrink tubing. I like to use a heat gun. The heat shrink tubing should help keep corrosion from getting up inside of that plug. And if you look really closely, this particular style has even got a little bit of glue or something in there that helps seal it up even further. So sometimes these bullet connectors are a little bit too big in diameter, and so I'll just pinch them down a little bit, but this one seems to fit just fine. Now let's see if the brake light works any better. Key on, should have our tail light, and brake. Oh yeah, that is considerably better. I think that was a good call. With the cobbled wires for the right turn signal, we need to add some bullet type connectors. Of course, we'll need the female style since these are the male. However, the inner diameter here is just a little bit big, so they don't snap in place. Just kind of loose. So we're gonna have to pinch these things together a little bit. Kind of want to squeeze one side into the other so that they overlap. Now we'll stick some dielectric grease inside of these terminals. We've got a black and a brown wire, so we're gonna go black to black. Oh man, I got those tight. Now before we go and wire up the left-hand turn signal, I notice there's a big old wad of tape right here. I think we better check that out. It is not neat and tidy like it would be from the factory. Oh, it looks like it got pinched. That would explain why it was done in the first place. There's a lot of tape for just some pinched off wires. Well, because I don't want to come back in here later when the wires corrode and break off and the turn signals quit working, I'm going to cut out this bad portion. That would be a problem in the future. So it's a good thing that we dug into this. Rid of that guy. Now these, you don't crimp them, but you can see there's a little band of solder in there. And when you shrink these things down, they get even smaller than the style that you crimp. Give them a little twist. Slip our heat shrink and solder on there. There it is. So now we've got a connector that is soldered and heat shrunk all in one go. We want to put a little bit of protection around this stuff just in case. You could do heat shrink, but since the factory is using tape, we're just going to use some electrical tape. Now, not all electrical tape is made the same. I like to go with a good name brand, stuff like this, because man, the other stuff, it just doesn't seem to stick as well. You can rip this stuff off by hand, but I don't like fingerprinting it all up and killing the stickiness. So I just go and cut it with a scissors just to make sure it sticks as good as possible. Black and black. There we go. Key on. Yes. Oh crap, it's blinking. Why is it doing that? I don't understand that. All right, what about when we put the brake on? Huh. Maybe that'll improve when the bike is running and it has more volts. This battery, I suspect, is also getting weak. Now our wiring will work as it's set up right now, but we still have the option of incorporating a brake light into our turn signals. We could just twist these together along with the brake light wire, but then if we want to replace a turn signal or the brake light separately, we'd have to cut wires. I would like to have connectors on these if we need to do anything separately. Now to illustrate the situation a little better, we have a wire from our right turn signal with a male connector on it, and left hand turn signal with a male connector, and our tail light with a male connector. And then we have the harness with a female connector. So we need to make a wire splitter that has male on this end and 3 females that all come together nicely. And with a butt connector right in there. Let's see what we have for fittings. We got butt connectors, spade, 1 male, and no females. Run to the parts store. So due to the routing of the wiring, here is what our little splitter is going to look like. We've got the male here to go into the wiring harness of the bike, 1 going for each turn signal, and the actual brake light. All right, let's see how we did. Brake lights. Yes, that's noticeable. Now that we have everything zip tied in place and heat shrink and dielectric grease and all the connections, we can put the plastic back on. But before we put our plastic on, now would be a good time to put on the tethers for our easy seat pin system. Put our little hairpins in here. There. Here's a little tip on where to position your wiring. This little hole here and here and right here where I put the brake light wiring through are needed for mounting the plastic. Keep these holes free. Route the wiring accordingly. Before we bolt down the plastic, we are going to need some sort of a rack there. Just something smaller and more sleek. For that, Kyle chose this one from Bradley Performance. It is steel, so it's a little heavier than what I would have liked, but we're going to put that on, and that bolts in right in here where that wiring goes. So it's important to get that wiring routed right so we don't pinch it. And for kicks, let's see how much this rack weighs. Looks like right around 3.3 pounds. So considerably lighter than the other rack. Would have been really cool if that was made out of aluminum. So to mount that rack, we need to take this bracket and slip it between the frame and the plastic. So now put our spacers in these holes. Now the bracket down below is still not tight. Don't want that tightened down until we get everything in place. Now I think it's safe to crank them down to a decent torque spec. Click, click, click. Yes, right there and there, perfect. Now to see if our seat pins that have a whole lot of Loctite on them all dried up. They sat overnight. If I try to crank on them, they sure don't seem to spin. There. So this is how much play there is if you don't want to shim it and everything, which obviously I don't think you'd want to. So now if you need to service your battery or anything like that under the seat, you can just yank these pins out instead of having to get a wrench out and spin a bolt out and yada, yada, yada.
Yada, yada.
Yada what?
Yada, yada, yada.
So with the back all wrapped up, let's see what we find up front.
There, that was easy. Thread the new turn signal on. It looks like with these terminals, we're gonna have to squeeze them closed just a little bit because these terminals are a little bit smaller. There. Oh yeah, perfect. Now to do that with ground shared with the other side and the running light wire also shared with the other side. Well, there we go. We've got our front turn signals mounted up and the wiring was considerably easier than the back. The wires were the perfect length to reach across here and get them tucked into our little connectors, but just a little pinch of those female connectors and then these connectors with the new lights will push in just so they have a little click. Let's see what they look like. Oh, looks like Knight Rider or something. So now, right turn signal. Ah, crap. They both, what the? Well, they're both front and rear doing it. How'd I screw that up? I got everything all torn apart trying to see if I thought maybe I pinched a wire back here with the rack and couldn't make sense of anything. So finally I plugged the original turn signals back in to see if it was a resistance thing. And so now I've got the key on, turn signal. Now it works just fine. We've got one on, not the other. But as soon as we unplug one of these incandescent turn signals, we lose resistance. And now both of them are working.
In the past, when installing LED turn signals, the only problem I ran into was that they flashed too quickly. And in that situation, installing resistors took care of the problem. Another solution I found is to install one of these adjustable relays where you simply spin the little dial and adjust the speed of the flash. However, this problem was different, and after a little bit of research, I found what I needed at TST Industries. It's a small plug-and-play diode module that's a piece of cake to install.
Let us see if these turn signals work properly now. Key on. Oh, yes. Right turn signal, left on the screen. Yes, much better. Running light still going on the other side. Left turn signal. Yes. Now we're talking. Yeah, another side and brake. Oh, yeah. Much better.
So with these upgrades finally completed, it's time to address the comments so many of you had in my previous TW videos. With all these power modifications, what exactly is the top speed?
For the record, it still has the same gearing as the previous test with a 15-tooth front sprocket and a 44 rear sprocket. And stock is a 14-tooth front sprocket and a 50 rear. So it's geared up quite a bit. Should be a little bit slower off of the bottom, but be able to carry a little more speed on top with less RPM.
However, it did still have enough on the bottom to lift the front end.
There we go, little TW. Third. Hopefully you can see the speedo. All right, we're in top gear. Better get in a full tuck. Maximum aerodynamics. There's 70 miles an hour. Come on. Come on, we're running on a road. And 75 indicated.
How about that?
And so it's still not exactly a speed demon, but as I've said before, I think this only tells part of the story. I believe Kyle says it best in my Black Hills video.
I cannot believe how much more I like this bike. After that rebuild and the exhaust and everything, totally changed it.
And while I did have to glue the taillight back together, I'm pleased to say that after our Black Hills ride, these inexpensive lights are still working perfectly. If you'd like to buy any of the stuff that I used in this video, I've got a list of links in the video description that'll lead you right to them on Amazon. And if you use my links, you'll be helping out my channel. And of course, you can always help by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thanks for watching.
How about that?